stage a little bit. We got word of the draft regulations that you all have been working on. And I think because the state wildlife area, we share a common boundary, wanted to invite you guys so you could kind of talk to the council, get some conversation going so we can better understand sort of the impetus behind the draft regulations and
Right.
what I think we're seeing as some pretty big changes in there, particularly with the closure lasting until July 15th. I think for us, it's a little unclear still as, I think we will go ahead and submit comments by that May 24th date, but also want to understand, is this pretty well cooked? Is there some negotiation or work that you'll be able to do yet with either the council or the community, so we can really get buy-in with these and make it work, hopefully for all the users. And I think I've worked on some draft comments, and I think the basic push behind why you guys are doing this, to make sure that the deer and elk herds are being restored. I understand from reading through, I think it was your herd management plan for the deer. It dated back to 2020. The elk looked like, I read an older one, but maybe you're still working on a newer one, trying to stabilize those numbers of those, and maybe we could understand that perspective as well. And then I'm sure council will have some thoughts to share. And we've got, probably these guys get hungry about 5:45, give them a chance to get some dinner before our regular meeting. So we've got, about 40 minutes or something.
Okay, absolutely. First off, let me introduce myself. Mayor Kane, council members. Darren Chacon, I'm the Assistant Area Wildlife Manager out of the Glenwood Springs office. So with my position, what I do is I handle kind of the daily operations on the state wildlife areas and then also our office. So whether it's applying, to find funding for certain projects, that's what I do. I work alongside Peter. I'll let him introduce himself real quick, and then we'll start the questions.
Yeah, Peter Boyott. I'm the District Wildlife Manager for the Basalt area. So I guess we'll start. So this process has been going on. If you remember, there was a representative, I think Jacob from Roy Polk Outdoor Volunteers, and Mr. Tannenbaum. We had met, discussing a possibility of a trail on the lower portion of the state wildlife area, and that was what, a couple years ago? 2 years ago, maybe.
So at that point, we were like, okay, we'll listen. But then I think, if you remember at that time, Matt said that our agency, CPW, was doing looking at all the state wildlife areas, trying to condense regulations. If you look at our regulations, it's overwhelming. Each wildlife area has a list of its own regulations. So a committee was put together and say, hey, let's streamline this. Let's put a bunch of the same regulations and general provisions, and then let's go to property-specific regulations for each state wildlife area, so we can kind of streamline it. Because if you're a public user or you want to go up here, it's a lot easier just to look at a few regulations rather than looking at everything. And when you look at general provisions, it's listed in there. So that was the whole process, starting with the regulations. Also with that, they started looking at prioritizing some of our state wildlife areas. The high priority, lower priority, kind of like a tier system. Basalt State Wildlife Area ended up as the highest tier. So with that, habitat preservation, conservation, managing it for wildlife was the main priority, and that's what all of our tier one state wildlife areas are. With that in mind, they all kind of have the general regulations. There's some little tweaks here and there with each individual state wildlife area. And so with that, just so you guys know kind of where we're coming from, if I may, this is the Colorado Wildlife Commission policy. This was in October of 2007, and the policy statement says,
It is the intent of the Wildlife Commission that, in accordance with state law, state wildlife areas be acquired and managed for the preservation and conservation of wildlife, their habitat, and to also provide wildlife-related recreation opportunities to the public, so long as as uses are compatible with wildlife and habitat management goals. And then it went into a couple different scenarios in through there. It did not, if I go back down here, it says non-wildlife oriented recreation. State wildlife areas are not acquired, designated, or normally managed to provide for non-wildlife oriented recreation. However, some uses are permitted when they are supportive of, incidental to, and compatible with wildlife recreation. Example is use camping, picnicking, hiking. So our thinking is that we didn't, essentially, I guess we could have closed off the entire area, open it during hunting season, like certain wildlife areas are. We wanted to open it up. It's been open April 15th. We extended that due to some of our knowledge of the area, what we've been seeing changes up there since we've been doing habitat work. So we extended that, and it is consistent with other state wildlife areas within the area. Even Garfield Creek has the same closure. They've had that since I've been on with the agency early 2000s, and that's been the same date that they've used. So with consistency, we've tried to go that route. So, and with that in mind, we have our June 15th closure that you may be aware for wildlife or for calving or production. There's also a period where we extended it where it allows for rearing of the wildlife, where the young are coming, they're not being bothered, that sort of thing. So that was our thinking with the July 15th date, and that also we use that date in certain wildlife comments for land use. So, and Peter,
Yeah. So just to add on to Darren, just a general cleanup of the regs. Some were taken out of property specific, but they were added into the general provisions. So we didn't take away anything. We made things more stricter. For instance, the shooting regulation now is specific to the shooting range, where it wasn't before. All the safety measures that were included are still in there. Since the Lake Christine fire, there's been a significant change in habitat to this area. A lot of new growth, a lot of restoration work on our end and volunteers. So we're seeing a good uptick in elk use. We're seeing a lot more deer use, and that includes fawning and calving areas and production areas. Not only elk and deer, but bighorn sheep. We actually are in year 3 of a collar study on our bighorn sheep on our S44 herd. So we do have collar data. We are seeing a lot of use of bighorn sheep on Christine unit year round, as well as transitional areas and lambing areas. This is a valley that's heavy on recreation, and we do see a lot of non-wildlife recreation on the state wildlife area as well. And so this is our opportunity and our chance to further our habitat conservation. And we also look at what's going on a landscape level when you talk about herd management plans, and so a DAU level plan, which is a data analysis unit, which encompasses basically our Roaring Fork Valley, Eagle and Vail Valleys for elk, and our deer DAU, which is specifically just for Basalt area. We have to look at what's being proposed and what are we losing on our private lands. In the general Missouri Heights area, up towards Spring Valley, there's a lot of development being proposed, thousands and thousands of acres that are potential that we're losing to housing developments, other sorts of developments. So when we look at things as a whole, this is definitely this move is a benefit to our wildlife, to conserve them and their future. So with that, if Darren, you have anything else to add to that, I mean, we can answer in your.
Yeah, you were asking about the process now. So we're staff, CPW staff has suggested these recommendations. At the last
commission meeting, they were presented to the Wildlife Commission on them. They'll review that. And part of that is this public comment time, so now the commissioners will take in what they, comments that were given. There was the opportunity for the public to do a statement at the commission meeting. During this process, there was nobody that came forward. But we still have the engagecpw.org, and I'd suggest for any of the members and for the general public, that's where the public comments can be made. They'll be tallied there. So again, engagecpw.org. You'll go there, there's a tab for the wildlife regulations and the changes. It'll show for each property, and then they can make comments. Now, June, I made a note, I think the next commission meeting is in June in the San Luis Valley, June 22nd, 23rd. That's when the commission will look at the reg changes. If they say, it'll be up to them to say, yes, we approve, no, we don't approve, or if they want to make any changes to it, that's the timeline. So there is still, I would highly suggest if you have comments, either individually or as the town of Basalt, reach out and do that.
Would it be useful for us to give you some sort of sneak preview about what our comments are likely to be tonight?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, would it would it be useful to you to hear maybe in a preview kind of sense what our comments,
we're
and
open.
Yeah, we can,
would you be able to convey those on to?
Yeah, we could, but I would still, I would still enter them. Then that way they're in
Great.
the system. But
Good
yes,
deal.
for sure, we're not here saying, no, this is the avenue and we don't want to hear you tonight. We're here to work and communicate that
Great.
sort of thing.
Okay.
Well, I think just a couple quick comments from us. I mean, a couple years ago when we met and, you guys indicated you were going to be looking at rules and regulations, kind of the next we heard of it was when I received, a communication that we have these draft regulations. And so, my worry is that we turn something in on the 24th of May and a decision is made down in the San Luis Valley without really a meaningful process to engage with, stakeholders that are, regular users of the state wildlife area. I think that we are pretty uniquely positioned here where we have users that are habituated to, get out of there until April 30th, but then are up there using what is an established trail system, that transitions from town of Basalt into the state wildlife area. And so, I think part of this, and your herd management plan even talks about it, is public buy-in is an important component to having these rules adhered to. And we know that enforcement isn't the easiest thing for you guys either. So, I think one of the things that we would ask for consideration is, is there an area that we can find that is close to the town border, takes in the existing trails perhaps, or reroutes some, where it's not as sensitive to the wildlife. I mean, you have houses close by. When I again looked at these herd management plans, they're this area is identified as winter range and severe winter range. I heard you say that some of that is morphing because of since the Lake Christine fire. But that said, it's likely that the fawning areas for the herds are not over the entire area. And the other thing that's a little troubling is there's a shooting range just right down the way. And so the point that Matt Yamashita had made was, well, they become habituated to that. It's predictable. That's where the people are. Those noises they know are controlled. I think I would argue the same thing for these trails if we can keep people more confined and give them some of these areas to access, even with a winter closure to the April 30th, then I think people can accept it more from that general public, stance. And I think we can help promote that message, and I think that spirit of cooperation goes a long way. So, I think those are a couple of the things that we're looking to put into our comments. Of course, the shooting range continues to be a sticking point for us, and it'd be really nice to have a weekend day where there is no shooting. And I think the other thing, we as the town have offered up, how can we assist with this financially or otherwise, that the Lake Christine itself, get elevated, because that's such a great asset, and that does fall exactly in line with your mission of providing fish and a place for people to go. It's close to our town boundary, and could be a really neat asset again. So I think those are some of the comments generally we're providing. We would really like the opportunity to have those seriously considered, and I think it would go a long way to have the public accept these changes.
Okay. Can I address okay, so let me address I'll address Lake Christine. And I was gonna update this before we finish. So just so that you know, I think the last time Matt and I were talking, we've had a big influx of personnel changes, dam engineers, that sort of thing. We have somebody that was on board. We've finally got a plan. Actually starting here the 20th, we're gonna go ahead and start. They're gonna do a survey on the lake where they're gonna be filling it for 20 days. From there, they're gonna be measuring water, they're hoping to actually raise it to max level. They've got a certain foot that they're trying to reach, and then they're gonna look at the integrity of the dam, are there seeps, from that data. Then we were asking the timeline. It's gonna be, we're hoping a year, maybe a year and a half. They'll say, this is what this lake is capable of doing. So then that way now we can move forward with the management plan. And I understand your frustration. Before I started here, we used to do fishing clinics up there. I'd go up there, I'd check fishermen, that sort of thing. And then when we repurposed it, things didn't work properly. We had to drain it because of the issues we had. So believe me, I would love to have that lake back. It serves a vital purpose, because if you look in our Roaring Fork Valley, a lot of our fisheries, they're destination fisheries, but along with that, there's special regulations with them. You can only use flying lure only, you got a slot limit. It's tough to get a mom and pop and their kids to go up to a lake and just, they want to, bounce a worm and catch a fish, and that's what it was intended for, a put and take fishery. So by all means, I think I speak for myself and the other staff. We'd love for it to get back to that. That's what it was intended. So we're hoping to be on track with that. It's just, again, and I can understand some of your frustration. If you're like, well, we've heard this before. Well, I can tell you now that there is something happening.
And to that point too, I mean, we are, so if you're not aware, but the Lake Christine Dam is on a restriction from the state dam engineers. So still state agency, separate state agency, but we cannot fill it or manage it the way we want to until that restriction is taken off. And they're driving what we do and how we do it. And it's just an ongoing process with studies and, ever since I've been here and before, we've had to do these studies, and we continue to be on restriction. So we're doing everything we can to be on off restriction, but until they give us the green light to fill that lake up, we want nothing more than to have that be used as its full potential.
Regarding your question regarding the range, after the fire, we have hours and stuff, and we close it on Wednesdays. I guess I would have to have Matt involved with this if there's gonna be more changes to a weekend. I would say that, when we've had, you know, like, different stages of fire, you know, fire warnings, that sort of thing, when we shut down the range, we've received comments from the Eagle County Sheriff, different wildlife agency, or, land agencies, that there's an increased use outside of the range, because people are just gonna go out there and shoot. So they're in support of us keeping the range open, because then we can direct folks to where it's being used. So I understand what the town's saying, but then we do get some of this information guidance from some of our partner agencies, and that this is what happens when we close that down, so. And it's uncontrolled, they go, and I think, Peter, you were saying that getting complaints from private.
I mean, yeah, last year, you know, we shut down the range for fire mitigation. We had a swift crew come in and do a complete veg remove behind the range. And yeah, there was a lot of complaints because when that range was shut down for a month, was it a month?
Almost a month and a half. When we
that dispersed a lot of shooters and a lot of private land. People were shooting on private land, so it caused some complaints. But yeah, I mean, those are certainly, we're always working to improve that range. I know that the task force we had the task force, and we went through a lot of those, and we're addressing those and always making improvements that we can. So I think that discussion is always open. And this is a, you know, this isn't an end-all be-all. We certainly have a wildlife commission that we do regulation changes on. So this is a statewide sweep to try to condense and modify these regulations. One thing too, just to go back to Ryan, some of your comments on to address the recreation side of things, and like Darren had mentioned, the use and intention of the state wildlife areas for wildlife related recreation and allow for other recreation. You know, wildlife management and recreation come to a head. There's definitely a conflict there, and there's definitely two different strategies. So there's a balance to be had, and wildlife viewing and wildlife related recreation is far different from updating your Strava score and running on the state wildlife area, putting your headphones on and zooming by. You know, people aren't stopping and letting animals rest and having their binoculars or even having a camera. So when we're talking about recreation and how we incorporate that, and whether it's wildlife related or not, becomes a challenge for sure. And so that's kind of where we, you know, the hard part for us is, and why, like I stated before, why we're trying to conserve wildlife, and our mission is for the wildlife. So.
But I think a couple of the things, just to respond, is you're also sharing a border with, you know, a municipality. And so people are going to use what's convenient to them. And I think there's what's ideal, and then there's what's practical. And, you know, from my standpoint, given that, you know, we are an important stakeholder on that state wildlife area. And I don't think this council is contending anything contrary to what your, you know, main focus is, which is to, you know, maintain, you know, these herds for, you know, hunting purposes. You know, we get that. And that being said, I do think we are in a special circumstance here where there should be some give and take. You know, I feel as though there wasn't the outreach during this process to really have that dialogue with our community. It was, you know, done at the commission level where, you know, you had a public comment opportunity. I was never informed of that public comment opportunity, and I don't think other people in the community were. Could we have found it on your website? I suppose, but that, you know, real public outreach is going to include, you know, that sort of meaningful dialogue, and I think that was absent. So I kind of feel like we're coming in at the tail end, you know, asking for some consideration on these things. And then I'll say, you know, as it relates to the shooting range, yes, I've heard that before of the dispersed shooting. I believe that's probably true at some level. But for all of the, public lands that we have around us, that includes the BLM and the Forest Service, for them to not come to the table and everything becomes the responsibility of CPW to thwart some, mishap for dispersed shooting, I don't think that's fair to you guys. And then I also don't think it's fair to the town that, we've increased the number of shooters, the regularity of shooting, which is fine. We've learned to kind of have some symbiotic relationship there. But I think asking for consideration of having, an additional day of closure is reasonable. And then those people that are coming and using it, they have that predictability. They might not be able to go on Sunday, so they're gonna come on Saturday, or they're gonna work it out in their schedule during the week. So, I think that's a legitimate ask, and one that we've been pretty consistent on over time. And then, finally, on the Lake Christine, I'm glad that you guys are making that headway. I would just say that, we've offered up our, services, if you will, or, some financial backing on that, where it's probably a little tougher for you guys sometimes to go and try to get a partner agency, to hurry it up a little bit. We've been waiting for a very long time. Use us to help advocate for you guys. What could we do? Could we go and jump up a level or two in the state government to try to talk to people and share our story about the importance of this asset to us?
I will add, that's great. When we've had discussions, the town of Basalt is always mentioned in that, because, Matt's aware, I've been aware, yeah, you're a neighbor to us, we're trying to be good neighbors. So no, believe me, it's always mentioned that, hey, we need to answer to the mayor, the council, they're asking questions, so we need to try and expedite as much as we can. Sometimes, like Peter said, there's certain things that are out of our hands, our timeline, but at this point, I'm happy and I'm optimistic that we're moving forward.
Yeah, and we would welcome any support from the town on reducing that dam restriction, but ultimately it comes down to human health and safety and what the state dam engineers want to see from the numbers on what that dam can produce. So I don't know that we can hurry that process up by, we can definitely show our support monetary. I don't know that, what they're gonna come back and say that, hey, you need a brand new dam, and we all know that price tag is gonna be very substantial. So we very much want to hurry that process up, but until we do these monitoring and we have gauge systems, we have piezo readings, there's a spring or a seep that we're monitoring. They're dictating, they're running the show. So if they, if it was up to us and we were off restriction, it would be all hands on deck to get that lake going and get everything cleaned up. So, yeah.
I'd like to make sure we have some time to hear from some of our counselors, because,
sure.
we're also, you guys, David?
So I appreciate you guys for coming out. We're talking about process and everything, and I think this is, like, if we want to know what good looks like, this is good. Us having this dialogue, and we should do this more regularly. I think that is, kind of the gist of what we're saying as far as that, just the outreach, right, is that we're having a conversation, and we're in absolute support of wildlife and wildlife habitat, like running into the woods and not paying any attention, totally get that. I think though a lot of myself and a lot of people, when I do see them, and I don't see a lot up there, they're walking and they're just observing the landscape, the turkeys, the deer, whatever, and hoping you see something up there. I also, the issue with simplifying the rules, I think the people here understand the rules for here. You know what I mean? Like, everybody knows you can't go in till April 15th. and you gotta be out by December 1st. So I feel like that's a solution for a problem that doesn't really exist, at least in this community. And so a one size fits all, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But just to be pragmatic and give everybody else time to speak to, I mean, outcomes, I mean, really, it's that trail system off a spur. We'd like to see that preserved with the hours or the dates, the current closure dates. It's right on the edge of town. The shooting range is right there. Same with the lower part, Lake Christine, and with the substation and the shooting range. I mean, I just can't imagine a whole lot of fawning and lambing and those kinds of activities occurring in that area. Just keeping that open. And then aspirationally, guys, I just want to say it because I like trails. I'd love to see better connectivity all the way across the other federal lands at some point. And I think that would be outstanding to give access from that side and just for users to better enjoy the area for the intended purposes, such as wildlife and wildlife habitat. I mean, it's an awesome piece of land. We'd love to be able to see more of it. So, thanks.
I'd like to offer a couple of thoughts. And first of all, appreciate you guys coming. And you got to know, I think everybody in the community appreciates what you do. And you know, we're blessed with you know, the largest elk herd in North America. And you know, my old friend Ron, the former Northwest Regional Manager, referred to our region as the Serengeti of the West. So, you know, I think we acknowledge the responsibility that we all have to keep these species going. My comments come from maybe a long and convoluted history with the agency. So in 2007, I was the chair of the Colorado State Parks Board, and then worked with Rick Cables through the very fun merger of state wildlife and state parks. I'm sure, Darren, you were probably there for that very interesting time. What I think that was all about, honestly, was an acknowledgement on the part of the governor and the agencies and the area managers, was that parks, human recreation, and wildlife needed a more holistic sort of management strategy rather than be adversary agencies and rivals for use of public land. We had to think through creatively how to respond to outdoor recreation and take care of wildlife. And so this sort of action feels like we're going back to 1975 or something here, where this is, and believe me, we're not shooting the messenger here. We know, you know, I know the agency pretty well, and I know you guys work really hard. We're just trying to convey our thoughts. So we're certainly going to get these on to the commission. But it feels like this is just all sort of a one-sided view, and it's strictly shutting down public access to an extraordinarily late date in the season, January or July 15th. You know, we've got some of the most critical calving areas at 10,000 feet of elevation in snowmass that are open for public rec on the government trail, like June 28th. Here we're 6,500 to 7,000 feet. That's been baking in the sun for months before July 15th. So one thing I guess we would raise is that really the right date? And the second is the Ridge Trail that I think Councilor Knight recognized there hugs the town border. So it's right above the Ridge subdivision, and then the trail drops down above the shooting range and into the substation site. So it's almost almost completely urbanized context. So, and well within earshot of the shooting range. So I guess what we'd like to put on the table would see if there would be some consideration. We know I think the opening date now is like June 1st or May 1. I don't.
April 30th is the last.
April
30th, okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's
30.
15th?
15th, yeah.
15th. So even the 30th, I mean, just some kind of acknowledgement that people can be responsible. We could, I know it sounds superficial, but simply advisory signs. I mean, the whole point of this is to get people exposed to wildlife, and then, you know, they become the stewards and the caretakers for our wildlife. And so it's kind of critical to our town. And I think it really speaks well of a relationship between the agency and the town, and sort of this broader vision of an integrated view of outdoor recreation and wildlife. So I would put that on the table. So at any rate, I spent 10 years on on the board. I chaired the commission. I was just reflecting, I worked under Remington, Cables, Broscheid, and my friend Dan Prenslow, who I say honestly still a good friend, so, you know, and Perry Will, when we'd let him up here, so. It was, you know, it's an agency with enormous responsibility, enormous promise. We just think that these strong-handed, sort of preemptory policies that are just laid out just send us back in time. And it's a little bit sad to see that we just have not had more communication. But I guess we're having it now, and hopefully we'll have some dialogue and we can kind of get our point of view across. So, who's the Northwest Regional Manager now?
That is Travis Black.
Oh, Travis is,
Yes.
okay. Cool. Are there any provisions for non-game species in this current strategy and in the non-game in the Lake Christine unit?
Meaning,
Yeah, because those were, there was no changes for non-game.
Okay.
That stayed,
Okay,
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please do.
Before we run out of time. Thank you for coming, and I do appreciate the management of wildlife. It's really important to me. And it's important to me as a hiker to be able to walk those trails and see, you know, everything from the little teeny purple flowers that pop up in the spring, you know, all the way to the deer, whatever, you know, wildlife I encounter or don't encounter, just knowing it's there. But I do want to say that there was a comment you made, and I know it probably wasn't intentional, but as a hiker and representing other hikers in our community who are not hunters, it feels like you're managing for hunters and not for the rest of the recreation. And I understand that hunting produces licenses and licenses produce revenue, but recently there was a change. It used to be that your fishing license would allow you to be on state lands. Now you actually have to purchase a permit of some kind to be on state lands if you're not fishing. So you have this other revenue source, and here you are, so you're saying, okay, we would like you to pay for this, and now we're gonna take something away from you. So I just wanna share that perspective.
Man, go ahead, and then I can, if I'd like to, I can answer any questions when we're done, if there's somebody else, or I can address that one. That's not intended just to single out.
Oh, I realize that, but I'm saying like that is the perception.
And the policy, and like I said, that was in 2007, it's not excluding, you're still able to access the property, it's just on a later date. We're not excluding all hikers and just say that it's just gonna be hunting and fishing only if you don't have a license.
Yeah, but you're still missing like the whole spring. And here, you know, luckily, the snows melt earlier, the trails are accessible earlier. And actually, on the flip side of that, there isn't anywhere else to go earlier because of that. So we definitely make use of those trails in the earlier part of the season. Then as later, by the time you get to July 15th, well, now you can be up on, you know, the Snowmass Trail, Capitol Creek Trail, whatever, those high trails, seeing the mountain flowers and everything. But so there's some benefit for us to have those open and available early.
right, and just to address that too, so other BLM, Forest Service, open spaces managed for multiple use on their properties. Their season dates, they dictate when their trails open, when their trails close. We oftentimes will recommend those dates to them, but ultimately they're the agency that gets to choose what dates they open, what dates they close. For us, it's the main purpose is wildlife, and then recreation as it allows, when it's not conflicting with wildlife. And like Darren was saying, it's putting the season date back. We're still allowing hikers to be in there, and not in a hunting capacity, but we're really aiming at protecting fawning calving.
Have data
and
and a
lambing.
report you could share?
Yeah, I can email you a list of literature that we have. There's been tons of studies.
But specific to the Basalt State Wildlife Area?
Not temporally, not right here. Across the road, we have a study going on. It's not published yet. It's ongoing. But the Vail Valley did elk study all across the western United States. Very similar studies to recreational impacts and disturbances in avoidance areas based on motorized and non-motorized recreation. So there is a lot of literature. We know we don't have a specific study on Basalt State Wildlife Area, but
And I think that's one thing you guys gotta realize, like, when it's brought up by constituents, when you say, recreation, you guys just gloss over the shooting range. And the shooting range is an issue for this town. And it's best to acknowledge that it's an issue for you guys so that it can still function and still be what it needs to be. But to just gloss over the shooting range aspect and say that somebody hiking versus somebody shooting a gun has a different impact doesn't make sense to the general public in any way, shape, or form. It just doesn't.
And I get that, and I guess when we talk about hiking, we're talking about, just like Mayor Kane said, he'd like to have the trail go from one end to here, or Mr. Knight, all the way across. That impacts our entire, it could have impact across the entire wildlife area. If we go from one point to another, our shooting range, and I get what you're saying, it's isolated, it's on the very edge, it's the closest to town, so it's something that we can kind of control. And I get it, yeah, it is, that's recreation as well. I'm not denying that. But with that, we can isolate it, we control it, we set the hours. That's more predictable rather than saying, okay, it's open April 15th. You can go any time of the day, any time of the night, that sort of thing. You can go anywhere you want right now. That we're saying that has more impact than when we have an isolated area that we can control and time frame, that sort of thing.
And I think that's like to Mayor Kane's point is, holistic approach. The trail that we're talking about is in the same area as the shooting range, is in the same vicinity. Advisory signs, please do not use trail from, 8 a.m., 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. I mean, there's ways to work around this that we could make, keep dispersed shooting from happening on public lands. And there's also ways that you can allow a small portion of this to function as a recreation area. I mean, I do want to point out, it says Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
No, correct, and I get that, we're a merged agency now. But with along the same thing, there's state parks, Rifle Gap,
Yeah.
Harbor Gap, those are parks. Those are managed for a different purpose. There's still wildlife recreation on there. Wildlife areas are still managed different than a state park. We're still the same agency, as I understand that. And it was, just like Mayor Kane said, it was a big undertaking to merge both agencies, because sometimes there's a lot of conflict in philosophy on how we manage, how our two agencies function. We're working on it. I think we've made big progress, or great progress, excuse me. But there's still a balancing act where we still have to support wildlife that, on our side.
And we're just asking for that consideration from April 15th to July 15th in that close-in area. I mean, like when the rubber meets the road, that's really, I think.
And I can't,
on the trails.
And on the trails, yeah,
Yeah,
not
like-
cross-country.
I cannot reiterate enough. I mean, now is still the time. There's nothing that's saying that it's a done deal. We still have two wildlife commissioners that sit within the Roaring Fork Valley, the Chairman Hauser and Commissioner Barney. Reach out to them as well. I know Commissioner Hauser, I can tell you, she's been looking at these comments. She's asked Matt, she's asked questions like that, she's engaged. So by any means, don't think that, hey, we're just kind of shaking our head up here. That's the whole purpose of this public comment. Our commission and the staff that we have, they look at that, and when it's time for that meeting in June,
if Matt needs to be, they're gonna ask questions of Matt. He's gonna be there to ask questions about that, so.
No, that's a good
I
suggestion.
don't want you guys to say.
We'll
think
reach
that-
out to our commissioners too.
Right.
That's great.
No, yeah, definitely don't want you to think that this is just a done deal. We want to hear from all of our constituents, public and government agencies.
And if I may, real quick, just say one thing, just the dates aren't just arbitrary numbers and dates to throw out there. We do have a reason behind that. You know, spring and winter time is a very critical time for wildlife. If you look up in the northwest corner on what's happening up there with their winter kill, we've issued statewide regulations on shed closures to stop hunting-related recreation to protect our wildlife. So the science is there. Those aren't arbitrary numbers. It's for fawning, calving, and rearing in time frame. So that's.
I do wish you
Right.
had a local report. I think, you know, if we're gonna get behind this, it would be so much easier if we could show that there actually is data here, not just generally speaking.
Well, sorry to cut this short. We got 10 minutes to eat and then got a public
We don't want
meeting
to
to
cut you
run
off from your
here.
dinner and get somebody mad.
And thanks again for showing up.
Yeah, thank
Yes,
you
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. And I do sincerely, we appreciate your comments, and again, I'll just say, make sure that you reach out, do the engage, that sort of thing, and reach out to our commissioners. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you,
You
guys.
guys.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the friendly confines of Basalt Town Hall, and this is our Town Council meeting for May 9, 2023. And we will, first of all, I would like to, before we get into the agenda, remind everyone that if you're not physically present here, but you are listening in, and would like to address council on any topic not actually scheduled later on in the agenda, you can do so by logging into www.basalt.net, and under agendas and meetings minutes tab, click on the May 9, 2023 meeting packet to open. On the meeting access instructions page, click on the link to join the webinar, and then our town clerk will admit you and you can address council remotely. Virtually. So with that, I would ask that we call the roll.
Absolutely. Let us begin with Elise Hoddle.
Present.
Thank you. Bill Kane,
Here.
Dieter Schindler,
Present.
Angela Anderson is absent, Glenn Drummond,
Here.
David Knight,
Here.
and Ryan Slack.
Here.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Except Angela.
So first order of business is our consent agenda, and we have minutes from April 25 is the only thing we have on consent agenda. So entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Good deal, thank you. Next item, call to the public. Please, if you would like to address council, come on up to the podium. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. Address your comments directly to the mayor. Identify yourself by name and address when making comments. Comments should be courteous, civil, and constructive. Town council will make no decision to take action except to direct the manager. So the floor is open for anyone who'd like to come up and address town council. Mr. Guy.
Sorry I was gone last week.
Yeah, well, we
meeting.
missed you, Ted. We missed you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We still got your letter.
We called around to see where you were, but we couldn't find you.
So for the record, Ted Guy, 167 Swinging Bridge Lane. While circulating petitions, somebody suggested that it would be very educational, I guess is the right word, for the town planning office to sort of look at the existing buildings and existing units based on our parking code to see how many parking spaces we actually need by code and how many we actually have, as is now and will have later. I think there's also something in the code, which I didn't have a chance to check, that if you can't provide sort of off-property parking within a certain distance, you can then spend $6,000 or something like that per parking space up to a certain number of spaces. But I think that would be very interesting. Also, I've been getting some mixed information about the bid opening. I think here in the council, it was mid-May, and in the newspaper article, it was late May. So is that something you could clarify?
I think it can be clarified, yeah.
Okay.
Can you come up, just get it into the mic? All right.
We originally had bids due May 12th. Since then, we've issued an addendum, and they are now due June 1st.
Okay, thank you. You know, that's one of the things that I think we as a community could do better communicating to like a weekly or bi-weekly blog that just says, you know, the following stuff's gonna go on. You know, we're closing the skateboard park to do new improvements. None of us
Those
knew that
things
until
tend-
you actually went by.
Those things are in the manager's report on Friday. So all that information you've asked for has all been disclosed to the public on my manager's report.
I realize, but a lot of people don't go there. And that's why I think it would be, public information would be good in the local newspapers.
Well, that's where the newspaper gets their stories a lot of the times.
And sometimes they cover them, sometimes they don't. One thing that concerns me, parallel parking has a real dangerous thing, which the driver opens his door into moving traffic. Diagonal parking and head in the passenger and the driver are safe, and when they're backing out, if they get hit, the car gets hit, not the person. And so I think that that's something, again, in favor of diagonal parking. And again, I'm really favor diagonal parking. We need more spaces out there, not losing approximately 22. I think the last thing is to recognize that the outreach by the design team was poor. If 30 of 30 businesses on Midland Avenue has to do a petition to get your attention, the outreach performed by the team wasn't very good.
Okay.
By the way, just one thing. 2 weeks or 2 meetings ago, I had a timer. I was at 2.5 minutes when yours closed, so.
I promise you, I just paused it for when she came up to
That's
talk to you, so.
But I would like to clarify something too, Ted. I don't, to my knowledge, we've never seen a petition of 30 business owners, have we?
No.
There's nothing been submitted to the town,
Oh, because
and we don't know that one
said there
exists.
was one, so I assumed it had been submitted.
That-
There's a
Nothing
list
was
of
submitted
businesses,
to
but
us.
There's no signed petition.
Okay, I'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so any others that like to address council? Calling in or? No, very well, thank you. That will conclude our call to the public. So mayor and council comments, reports, observations, caveats? Okay, I think we're gonna move on. The only, well, no, I'm not going.
I would like to say there is a watershed summit on Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
From, the whole watershed, Roaring Fork Valley, Frying Pan Valley, down at the 3rd Street Center in Carbondale. Actually don't know the exact time, but
8:30 to 4.
8:30 to 4. So,
Very
just
good.
if anyone's interested in water and wants to know what's going on, it's gonna be a pretty big summit, so.
So, for benefit of the public, we had a work session with Colorado Parks and Wildlife officials this afternoon, and we expressed our concerns for a proposed closure of the, what we informally call the Ridge Trail. The trail goes up Ridge Road, circulates back behind the shooting range and the electrical substation trail. And the CPW has proposed keeping that closed until July 15. So we're providing comments, and so we had I think a very constructive exchange here this afternoon. So stay tuned on that one.
And would encourage the public to go to engagecpw.com.
Org.
Yeah.
.org
Yeah.
to submit comments. Have until what, May
24th.
May 24th. So running out of time.
Mr. Manager, do you have?
Just a couple quick things. Believe it or not, the pool is scheduled to be open at the end of the month, over the Memorial Day weekend, I believe it is. It's hard to believe since the snow just came off, but the Public Works and Matt Kay from our Recreation Department were over there pulling the cover off and getting things, the shade sails up, and working with our folks that help us with the heating system, just getting it all started and kicked off. So we're hoping that it's all ready and warm for people when that weekend comes. So pretty exciting.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
How are we looking on lifeguard hiring and swim lessons and all that, or at least?
Well, they're accepting applications now, and we do have our pool manager that came back from last year, so that's good. He's got some knowledge of how to work the pool and troubleshoot the pool and that kind of thing. And I don't know how many applications they have yet, but I know of 2 myself that have been submitted, just from friends of my son. So otherwise, I think they're planning on having some return kiddos from last year. So again, they kind of already know the drill. But as far as I know, it's looking okay.
Good, thanks.
And then the second thing, just in case any of you are over at Albany Park, we installed a new shed that's back behind the old backstop that's over in the corner of the park. And we did a lot of work to try to, not just make it kind of disappear into the background. It's sort of in the back of the trees a little bit. The purpose of the shed is to get the gear that was traditionally used for our summer camps that operate out of Albany Park, out of the Albany barn. That was a request from the Historical Society, where we were kind of intermixing some of the old artifacts with, summer things. So we got that put up, so they should be happy that we won't need to use that space anymore. And other than that, that's all I have for the moment.
Great, thank you. So, with that, then, we'll turn to presentations, and Doug's been busy. He did the fourth quarter results last meeting, and now we got first quarter 2023, and hope you do as well tonight as you did last time.
Well, we'll see. You'll have to let me know here. So, all right, so we got to close out first quarter. This week we've been working on the audit with our audit friends. They were here today. And so anyway, for the first quarter, the general fund has shown, it's like basically a quarter of the way through the year. We have actual revenue for financing sources of $2.8 million compared to a budget, or actually compared to last year's number at this time at $3 million. So we're off slightly, but it's not material. We're over 25% of our revenue has been actualized for the first quarter, and that's what you would expect here for the first 3 months. I think a couple noteworthy things within the general fund itself is that there is some weakening of the sales tax number. We're showing an actual number compared to where we were last year, slightly ahead of ourselves. But I saw the number today for April, came in today at about 5% less than it was a year ago now. So some of that weakening is starting to appear, or at least it did this month. So we'll keep an eye on it. And it's a bit of a trailing indicator. There's not a lot we can do about it. We can react to it, but we can't really influence the number. Another thing to note in the license permit section is that our permitting number is not pacing our budget number. We're only about 10% of our number. But I have been in consultation with our colleagues over at the building department, and there are a number of permits that are in queue. We have the big development coming in over here, supermarket, whatnot. There's some of that's a prefab, I understand it, construction, which may yield less in the way of permits. But I think the headline is that Mitch felt that we would still make our number. It's a bit of a timing difference being created here. We took it down, if you remember right. We budgeted $300,000, and last year we came in at $650,000. So we've conservatively managed that number down. So I don't believe there'll be a surprise there, but time will tell. Next thing to note on just percentages being above normal is that our interest earnings for the first 3 months totaled $182,000 compared to a whopping $3,000 last year, sometime last year. So we're doing pretty well on our earnings.
You can thank the Fed for that.
Thank the Fed, yep. And, I saw like the 30-day Treasury now is still over 5%. So there's going to be a lot of probably noise until this budget resolution passes with budget debt ceiling with our friends at the Congress and White House, whatnot. So anyway, so that's the general fund. The expenses are all within range. There's a timing difference being created here within the administration area. It's a little bit ahead of itself, but that's principally due to we bought some software programs and licenses that we had amortized over the course of the year in the budget, but we've now incurred cash. So it's a bit of a timing difference being created with that. So I don't see anything here that's really aberrant on the expense side, and I think actually in pretty good shape, other than the three things I've noted on the general fund. Before I go to the restricted, any questions on the general fund?
Any questions, councilors? I had one. There was just,
Yep.
there seemed like a pretty wide delta here on the an obscure line called unrestricted building permits. We did $364,000 in year 22, actual,
Right.
and we're budgeting 329. We took in 33.
Right.
Is that just summer activity hasn't fired up?
Well, that's why, I was referring to, is that we're only 10% of our number.
Okay.
So we are not pacing, we're under budget. We should have a quarter of our budget. But I also think some of that budgeting, a lot of that building may occur also in the summer versus winter months. That wouldn't explain why you have 365 in the
Okay.
first 3 months of 22 compared to where we are now.
Can I ask one question? too?
Sure.
For the sales tax, take 23% of budget, I mean, is that pretty much, in line with seasonality? It's probably not linear. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts
well,
there?
we budgeted a flat number of 23 relative to 22. So I believe when you're looking at the 1714, that 1,714,000.
Yep.
Compared to 694, I say is slightly ahead of ourselves. So that seasonality is already reflected in these numbers.
Okay.
Did I answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, it did,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, even,
Yeah, I mean, it bears watching. I think we have headwind. We have still like 38 million in cash,
yeah.
and we're doing really well with it. So that tailwind.
So we
have
took
on-
in 22% of our total budget in the 3 slowest months of the,
Yeah, and
year, so-
we've already got April in the books, and it's like 5% less.
okay.
So, we can always borrow trouble on some of these line items, but I believe it bears watching. I think the safety valve, frankly, is that there's capital that, if things really get off the rails, some of the capital we push to the following year.
So all our reserves are in good shape?
Reserves are in excellent shape. As I said, we have
Okay.
38 million or so in cash. I got some good news on the restricted fund, if I want to just turn to that just for a second.
Okay.
I don't want to go too much over time. But there was a bell ringer occurring in the first quarter. The Element Hotel sold, and we received something like $800,000 in the way of a transfer tax for Rita. And we have to give a piece of that to Takao, and then we have another piece that we keep in Rita 2, which is for public amenities, arts, whatnot. So if you look on the first quarter, we had received, it was about $900,000 of Rita transfer funds, and we had not budgeted a dollar of that.
Huh.
So that's a bit of good news on the financial front. And you'll see the same theory here about our tax dollars. Lodging tax is pacing higher. We're getting a little higher compliance
Yeah.
with our friends renting their places. And tobacco tax, even though we budgeted a lower number, continues to roll off to
Yeah.
$2 a pack. So I guess that's good news, bad news, right? Guess depends on how you look at it.
Great.
Anyway, so nothing really aberrant here on the expense side either. So I feel like on the restricted side, we're better than we thought, because we didn't have that money from the element in here.
Good.
And on the construction side, I wouldn't pay too much attention to this presentation as it relates to this. It's really a lagging indicator. The program that we have with our owner's rep is really a better indicator of keeping track of our funds. And we'll know better where we are with, when the bids get resubmitted for phase 2.
Yeah.
So, no, that's what I got.
Related, but not directly, you want to just mention about the audit?
All right, so we had our audit friends here today. I don't know, it's either gonna be like the cleanest set of books or the easiest audit I've ever had, because it's like, not getting too many questions from them.
Yeah, I think we all got an email from a young lady at
Okay, good.
McMahon and explained the process. And
Good, well, they were here doing the rounds, they talked with
Yeah.
everybody, they're talking to, I think, the Public Works area tomorrow. And, I feel very confident, I don't think we're gonna have anything to worry with there, we'll just do our documentation, our disclosures, and, I talked to him about timing, I wanna get the report in June, so we can apply for our GFOA award for financial reporting, and, also get our documentation in for the state, because we have to submit our financials to the state. I don't want to roll into July. I'd rather be working on our budget in July.
Yeah,
So,
great.
that's what I
Thank you.
got. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Doug, for that update. Any other questions before we go on? All righty. So the first council action item for tonight is a public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 5 of 2023. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting river setback waivers at 40 River Cove. James?
Yeah,
Evening.
thank you. Let me please share my screen here, just a quick second. And we have Kevin Michelson with us representing the applicants this evening. This is a continued public hearing and a second reading of an ordinance that would approve of an application submitted by Michael and Kimberly Tates. And it's for river setback waivers from the 50-foot river setback to construct a porch and a porch roof and a deck, second floor deck over an existing at-grade deck on the riverside of a house at 40 River Cove. And you can see it here. It's this lot, and this is River Cove coming off of Cottonwood Drive. The property, as was noted at first reading, is a single-family residence that was constructed in 1991, and it's on the cul-de-sac. It backs up to the Frying Pan River, and it was constructed in compliance with the 30-foot river setback that was in place at the time that they built the structure. And then the river setback was subsequently changed to 50 feet. The proposal, as was discussed at first reading, is to construct a porch roof as well as a second floor deck over the existing deck that is located on the riverside of the structure, which is an at-grade deck. This deck was built to the 30-foot setback that was in place at the time. As was explained at first reading, the process for reviewing a river setback waiver or exemption requires P&Z to make a recommendation to the council. And the criteria include that the council make findings that the river setback requirements impose an unreasonable hardship that is not created by the property owner, and that the impacts on the ESA will be mitigated, the ESA being an environmentally sensitive area. The code also includes language allowing for community benefits such as improvements to the habitat adjacent to the river to be considered in exchange for granting waivers. In reviewing the request that was made, the P&Z recommended approval to the Town Council with the conditions that are included in your draft ordinance that's in your packet. And one of those conditions requires that the applicant change their bluegrass in the backyard of their structure to a fescue turf that's a low water turf. This was suggested by the Roaring Fork Conservancy as a benefit to the project. And, you know, as noted, the P&Z recommended approval with the conditions that you have. The other conditions require that the applicants provide a drainage plan for approval by the town engineer at the time of permit, as well as requiring a construction management plan that would limit impacts on the the riverside of the structure by providing storage of materials on the non-riverside and establishing a barrier around the area of construction. So this evening, staff would recommend that you hear any comments the applicants have, take public comments because it is a public hearing, and then provide council discussion. And ultimately, if you're comfortable, you could approve the ordinance on second reading. And as I noted, we have Kevin here this evening to provide comments or answer questions if you have any.
Good evening.
Great, thanks for having me, and thanks for summarizing that so well, James. And we don't really have anything to add. We appreciate you guys looking at this application, and we're willing to replace the grass as the community benefit, and we think it's a reasonable request.
Great. Well, it's a public hearing, so I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience or anyone calling in that would like to address council on ordinance number 5. Okay, not hearing that. Are there questions from council? Discussion?
I just have one. I know in the first reading, we had talked about the water drainage that had caused the original problem. And you said you were gonna meet maybe with an engineer or something on where to put the water from the deck and the new roofs. And
Correct.
have you sorted that out, or will that go?
No, we haven't sorted that out. That would be part of the process when we engage a civil engineer. We haven't done that yet. We want to
Waiting
make
on
sure we
the
have
approval
approval. But there's going to be a solution. I've seen it on a number of properties, so I just couldn't speak to what that solution might be right away.
Not a problem. Thank you.
And the conditions do require a drainage plan for approval by a town engineer.
Anyone else?
Would the conditions for the, like the porch, I guess the second deck porch, prevent that from ever being enclosed?
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to enclose it under the current approvals. Correct.
Does that count as FAR under that?
It doesn't currently as an open porch. You know, if ultimately they propose to enclose it, it would count as
Okay.
floor area. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 5, series of 2023.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Please call the roll, Pam.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson, Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
and Bill Kane.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Enjoy the porch.
When do we get to come over?
Don't offer me, huh? Knocking on your door.
All right, item number 7B, public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 7, series of 2023, ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving easement agreement with Two Rivers Condominium Association, Inc., for the location of soil nails in our retaining wall. Catherine, do you?
I'll handle this one.
Oh, okay, sorry, Jeff.
Yep.
Let's see that.
So this is second reading on an ordinance to approve an easement agreement. This relates to the construction on Midland Spur and construction of a retaining wall. And basically, as part of the construction, the retaining wall and there's a need for soil nails to secure the retaining wall into the hillside. And those soil nails go in a number of feet into property that's owned by the Twin Rivers Condo Association. And so this is an easement agreement that would grant the town an easement for the location of that retaining wall and the soil nails into the property. Since first reading, did get a couple of comments from the Condo Association on the form of the easement agreement, which I've reviewed, and they're really just to memorialize some common law principles related to easements. And the form of the ordinance provides me the authority to make some changes to it, and this would be within the scope of that, but did want to let council know that we have been in touch with the Condo Association, and there were a couple minor changes, and otherwise, that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
That's done, right? I mean,
It's got to happen.
Put the walls in, right?
very artistic, looking like a little basalt kind of outcrop there on the wall, so. Okay, so this is a public hearing, so is there any comments from the public, either virtually or in the audience? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 7, series of 2023 on second reading.
Second.
Okay, Pam, please call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
and David Knight.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, for the next order of business, we have to convene as the local liquor authority, so I would entertain a motion. Do we go into liquor license authority?
Just a motion to convene as the local liquor authority.
Mayor, I move to convene as the local liquor authority.
Second.
Okay, so that's all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, we will now sit as the local liquor authority. So this is a public hearing for a temporary modification of premises. Breeze Booze LLC DBA, doing business as Jimbo's. So Pam?
Another one of my exciting memos on liquor modifications.
AKA DBA.
Okay, so this evening, you can see I have listed from the state statutes or the requirements for the liquor enforcement, the requirements for a modification. They have to, in making your decision whether or not this modification is allowed, you need to talk about the reasonable requirements of the neighborhood and the desires of the adult inhabitants. And I see that Gonzo is not here. He was to bring me a petition this evening, signed by the adult inhabitants of the neighborhood.
It looks like he's walking.
Matt's on, yeah, Matt Taylor's online, I'm sorry.
He's on his way, gentlemen. I'm in contact with him. He's walking over now.
Perfect, thank you so much. So he'll probably bring those. And then the possession by the licensee, by ownership, lease, or rental, or other arrangement, which we do have a lease in the name of the applicant. Compliance with the applicable zoning laws of the municipality, city, and county, and planning has authorized, in fact, encouraged this amendment, so this temporary modification, so we know that the zoning is applicable, and compliance with distance prohibition regard to any school, and they are over 500 feet from the nearest school. A legislative declaration that the Colorado Liquor and Beer Codes are an exercise of police powers. There he is. Hi, Gonzo.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Which we meet. And so we went to all the investigating agencies to talk about this. The point of this was to temporarily house Jimbo's Liquors in another part of the property so that they could retain their liquor license and keep their employees employed during the construction over there. And so to that end, we went to all of our investigating agencies, planning, police, fire, rescue, and building. We have talked with each of them. All of their comments are listed in my staff memo. And Jimbo's, Gonzo's well aware that we will not issue any permit until everybody in the investigating world is happy with the safety and security of the employees and the customers. And we've been all working together very closely. Building department, planning, fire reported today that they were happy with the latest design over there, so they're comfortable with the layout. The town is going to be placing some of those concrete jersey barriers near the property, so to direct vehicle traffic and construction traffic away from the structure. And I guess I don't have anything else to say other than this is a public hearing, and so you might want to speak with the applicant and or his attorney to see if they have any additional comments. If council has any questions, happy to answer those before we go to public hearing or after.
Okay. I guess we'll.
Does Gonzo want to address the?
Yeah, and you had your petition to submit?
Yeah, we submitted a petition that obviously, by the end of that night, we had all the papers filled because.
I had no doubt.
The town is aware, but I don't know if everyone is aware that it's not that we want to do this trailer thing. There's a law in the liquor code that doesn't allow for new liquor licenses in a town this size in a radius of 3,000 feet. That's anywhere in Basalt. I would be 3,000 feet from TED, from Alba Liquors, and from 7-Eleven. And my license is at 128 Basalt Center Circle. It's been there for 51 and a half years. And it's for that place we're grandfathered in. We're all grandfathered in, so we are there. But I wasn't allowed to temporarily move it somewhere. And I'm also not allowed to say, okay, I'm gonna go to Argentina for 2 years, come back when the project's done, because if my license is not renewed every year,
I would lose a license and I wouldn't be able to reapply to the license where it is. So this is just, like a really last, taking a lot of moving parts, as Pam really well said, to really make this happen, so that, one of Basalt's oldest running businesses keeps standing with all our employees full employed, and, and so we really appreciate, we have no words for how everyone has worked a lot, for this little project, but obviously, there's a lot of people in town that also express that whatever you need, and I'm like, well, I probably won't have whatever you need every time, but we'll have our staples. We're gonna work with our app a lot to encourage people to shop before, if they're, your usual order, place it through the app when you are, leaving, or when you're 5 minutes away or whatnot. Let us know you're coming. We have it ready in the counter. We're walk you to your car. You come inside, but just it'll be paid for. Minimize people in there. Minimize the already hectic downtown operation. But yeah, it's really a last resort operation. I'm sure you saw the pictures. We're moving to a space that is roughly 10% of the current operation that we already manage pretty tight. So, and on the same note, the fact that it might happen after the summer, or when the summer is finishing and not in July or May, as it was originally going to happen, is also huge for us, because getting used to the tiny operation in the fall, winter, spring, and then by the winter, we have 80 on roller skates in the parking lot, but it's just, it takes a village, and the village is helping. So I hope you guys, if you have any questions.
Right.
Just, besides the fire district, there wasn't anyone else we were waiting on comment from?
No, and we did get comments today from the
From
fire district just this morning. I didn't get those sent out to you, but yeah, he's happy with it, and we're going to continue, because this is rather moving constantly. We will continue to work with all of the investigating agencies to make sure that they are comfortable, and to make Gonzo's employees safe and his customers safe out there.
Just out of curiosity, once he moves into the other place, does it get remodified?
He will have to do, we'll probably have to do another modification of premise to move him back.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think Gonzo summarized it well, kind of what the need is for this.
Right.
Under the current liquor laws, the license can't be transferred anywhere, and you can't, it can't go out of operation and then apply for a new one based on these distance limitations. And so this is to modify the existing premises on the property. It's within, on that same property area to the parking lot, and then the modification will then go back to kind of the newly created premises, a permanent modification of the license. And you'll see modification of licensed premises in other contexts, like when a restaurant might utilize a patio area, or they might utilize a street area. So this is something that happens. I haven't seen a lot of them that are using exactly what Gonzo has, but I look forward to seeing the roller skates.
Yeah.
So.
It's a little different model for sure, and cannot be on wheels. There's all sorts of little things that we have had to comply with the state, but the state has indicated that it was their idea to some extent that this would work. So we're relying on that heavily.
Okay.
Send it back to them with the application. So council has any
Mr. Taylor, do you have any comments that you would like to make?
No, thank you. I think Gonzo expressed it quite well, and I think the licensing position has been well summarized here, that unfortunately, due to the statutory scheme, we kind of have to, we really have to keep this going, if only to keep a kind of toehold on his license during the period of the construction. But I feel very confident that that everybody's been able to work together, you know, from a regulatory perspective to do what needs to be done for the permits and make sure he's in compliance with everything going forward.
Okay, thank you.
What was, maybe I missed, what was the owners association feedback there? I thought, was that something we're waiting for still?
Well, there are some conditions, and we do still have to get a little bit of paperwork from the homeowners association, but they have agreed to, the HOA has agreed to this use, this temporary use. Yeah.
I mean, as we all know, I've been working on this project for 8 years. Some of you for longer maybe. And so baby steps here, and that's something that, you know, has to come, and hopefully it takes a long time and I'm here a little longer. But yeah, we're happy that it's going that way.
Well, great.
So, yeah, we do have 4 specific conditions listed in the memo, which would be incorporated into tonight's motion if the council was comfortable with doing so.
Pam, is there any issues on dates on this? Like if it is delayed from, like he's not forced to move out until he's you know, do we have to, is it all open-ended? I don't.
It should not be, because his license is, covers a full year, and we will renew next year about this same time. And so it will overlap, and we should be fine as long as we keep in compliance with the liquor license timing.
Okay. Just want to make sure if there's a delay in something that we aren't trying to bind ourselves to.
I don't believe that it's going to matter, because he can stay at his current location until we move, right?
And really, one thing leads to the other one. They are not only leasing the parking lot from the HOA for Jimbo's, they're leasing it for the whole operation.
Yeah.
We're just taking the minuscule part of it. So until they have a lease for that, they kind of, you know, really tore it apart and tore on all the machines. So it's all tied together. So yeah, we are. Take their time, you know, if I can be here for Christmas.
Okay, so.
Yeah,
Public hearing, right?
Yeah, so this is a public hearing. Anyone else, anyone in the audience that'd like to address council on this matter or call in? Hearing none. Any further questions from council? Do we take action as a local authority?
Mayor, I move that the town council approve the temporary modification of premises.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Of course. Okay, let us begin with Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Peter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes, and thanks for all the help figuring this out.
you're welcome, and Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks for
Good
sticking
deal.
with it, Gonzo.
Gonzo, me gustaría decir buena suerte, porque puede ser problemas si no hay tienda para cerveza, ¿no?
No hay cerveza, no hay construcción.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys so
Okay.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Mayor, I move we adjourn the local liquor authority and reconvene the Basalt Town Council.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Great. Okay, we're on to 7D, Resolution 19. Resolution of Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a contract with McKinstry for the construction of the Basalt Solar Project. Catherine,
I am here, yeah.
good to see you. Good to see this thing moving.
Yeah, agreed. James is going to pull up a couple slides for me. But thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me this evening. Tonight, I am bringing forward to you the construction contract. We are hoping to engage with McKinstry on for the 5 solar arrays that we've identified through McKinstry's vetting and planning effort on the 9 potential sites that were initially identified in and around Basalt. As you know, town staff has been working with Holy Cross Energy and the school district on this project. And ultimately, the 5 sites that were identified as viable for solar arrays were the Basalt High School, which will receive a ground mount site. As you drive up to the high school, be located on your right, and that will be 180 or almost 187 kilowatt size. The next will be at Basalt Elementary School. That'll be a roof mount system at nearly 52 kilowatts. And then the Basalt High School concessions on that roof mount system, that will be 14 kilowatts. We'll have a little over 30 kilowatts at the bus barn in Elgibel, where all the school buses park over near the fire station in Elgibel. And then the final one will be on our new Public Works building that we just completed out near TAC Fitness and the medical center there. Overall, we'll be avoiding 201 gosh, I'm blanking on the unit, of greenhouse gas emissions, or metric tons, thank you, greenhouse gas emissions. And on the next slide, it just shows you where those arrays will be generally located. McKinstry went through a public bid process to find a qualified group that would do the solar array installation. They'll be procuring the material, but SunSense will be doing the actual installation, which I think will be a benefit to the project to have a local installer. So as we move into the operations and maintenance phase, they'll be able to help us having installed it. Overall, we did see some cost increase in the project, as we're seeing kind of across the board with construction prices, but also the materials themselves increased in price. But overall, the total project costs will be $1,794,457. Of that, as you know, we were able to secure a DOLA grant for $574,842. And then we'll also be able to receive an investment tax credit, once the project is installed. So the year after it's installed, we'll be able to realize over $600,000 as a tax rebate. So at the end of the day, at the most, the town would need to invest $594,090, which will be covered by the town. And as you know, this project is intended to be funded by the Basalt Forward project. And we had committed $2 million from that bond initiative towards green projects, and this will be covered by that. So on the next slide is the phasing. If you all agree to engage in this contract this evening, we'll start procuring the equipment. Because 4 of the 5 sites are located on school district property, they have to go through a state permitting process, which is a little bit lengthy. It's about 17 weeks, so that will slightly delay the actual construction, but we hope that by the end of the summer we'll have permits for all of the sites, and the installation itself should last through the fall, and then there'll be a training period where we get the school district personnel and others who will be helping manage the site there to make sure they're fully understanding of how the systems will work. And then the goal is to have the project fully complete by the end of 2023, so that we can realize that tax rebate as part of 2024. The town has entered into an MOU, as you all know, with the State Energy Office. They have been and will be providing technical support. They've reviewed the draft contract. That draft contract is a template that comes out of the State's Energy Office. And Delynn Southern is on the line if you all have any questions for her. She supports small communities in these energy efforts around the state, and she's available for questions at the end here. And then otherwise, I think that's really about it. We also have Martin Beggs and Ashley Brassavan on the line. They're both with McKinstry, and they're happy to answer any questions you all have on the project. And the last thing I might just add is, we've worked really closely with the school district on this, and specifically Jeff Gatlin. He's been really great to work with. And the intent is the $35,000 of annual savings that we'll be able to realize on each of the energy bills on each of the structures. That $35,000 will first be used to cover any operations and maintenance costs, and then otherwise it'll be a 50-50 split of the savings between the town and the school district, and the intent is for the town to reinvest those monies in our green projects. Jeff has helped us draft an agreement with the school district that just clearly delineates that sharing agreement. And it will be going to the school board this month, but that's the gist of it. We'll also take it to you all at our next meeting. But that would be, the framework of the agreement that we'll have with the school district going forward. So yeah, that's about it. I'm here to answer any questions, and like I said, Ashley, Dylan, and I believe Martin are on the line as well.
How much has Holy Cross's new rates affected this? Did you guys have two different kind of spreadsheets on that, or?
So luckily they've been really involved with Mid-Construed to help figure out some of that, and Ashley could probably do a better job answering some of that than I, but they gave us kind of a heads up on that coming down the line. And in working with them, and Mike Steiner with Holy Cross has been helping us kind of navigate some of the changes and their removal of the tariffs based on the sizes of the different arrays. Ashley, can you provide any more detail on how you worked that out?
Yeah, Holy Cross has been really great to work with. So they told us about the rate switch in January, which slightly delayed things. So some of the sites are actually grandfathered into the old tariff. We're going to get those interconnection applications in prior to, I think it's the September 1st deadline, and then some of them will go on the new rate tariff. So we did an analysis of what we thought would be most beneficial for the town. The total impact of the rate switch, I believe, is like $2,000 or $3,000 per year in penalty for annual savings. So I believe you all were around 37 or 38,000 annual savings prior to the rate tariff switch, and now it's about 35,000 per year in annual savings. So there was a little bit of a penalty, but not too much.
Awesome. Oh, it's a penalty. You look at the numbers, it's really interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a penalty to put up solar?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I'll tell you after. It's a funny number.
Questions for Catherine?
I think this is fantastic, and I'm excited for it. My main question was, I was a little bit confused reading the memo and the supporting information about the cost breakdown between, in the contract, like what goes to SunSense, what goes to McKinstry, what their role is after they procured the solar panels. Are they acting as like an owner's rep? Is that what we're paying them for? Like, I would have liked to have seen a breakdown of the costs.
Okay, sorry that wasn't more clear, but so we're in a design build contract with them, and they're acting as a general contractor as we move into this build contract. So they've been working through the design phase up to this point. There'll be a little bit more design to do under this contract, but largely they'll just be acting as the general, procuring the materials and acting as a general contractor to supply to SunSense.
And then SunSense is like a subcontractor.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. So we won't have a contract with SunSense directly.
I see.
Did you, in your sort of noodling about this, have you guys thought about what this sort of equates to in terms of single family or average residential kind of consumption? So I'll just kind of talk through. So I thought it might be kind of a neat exercise for us to keep tabs on our kind of score sheet on how we're doing in terms of renewables, in terms of their residential equivalency. So an illustration, we did the micro hydro project. So that worked out to about 25 single family home equivalents, given our 300 and some thousand annual kilowatt hour production. So this guy's going to produce 461,000 annual kilowatt hours. I think the number is like 1,200 per residence per month, so maybe 14,000 per year. Long and short of it, that's another 33, 34 houses that are mitigated. And we take that with all of our other PV installations that we have at the middle school and around town. You know, I don't doubt we're north of 50, 60 homes that we have mitigated for in all of our renewable energy efforts and our climate action plan. It'd be kind of a fun thing to do. I think, you know, high school kids might enjoy it too. We kind of generate a community scorecard on how we're doing. I think it's going to be pretty impressive at the end of the day when we get through all of our efforts here. So I just throw that out as an idea.
Oh, I think that's a great metric to kind of get your head around, you know, what an impact this project has. But yeah, we can work on generating something like that.
Is 1,200 a month a number? Does that sound
Ashley would probably know better. Did you hear that question, Ashley? Do you know?
I did. I made a note to, I can get that number to you, Catherine, maybe after the meeting.
Okay.
I don't know it off the top of my head.
Would it ever be possible, practical to add, like, at the high school in particular, I saw a lot of open space there, add more panels and do that?
I mean, the ground mount area, they really tried to maximize, and a lot of it has to do with some of the Holy Cross limitations. But I think, you know, they really identified that the roofs at some of the schools would be ripe for additional arrays. I think a lot of it has to do with the lifespan of the roofs. So if they're ever to replace their roof, I think that would be a great point at which it would be good to install solar. So now we know kind of where it makes the most sense. But as far as the ground mount array at the high school, they really did try to maximize that space.
So the roof's the next place to go.
Yeah.
How much money do we have left after this is all done?
Well, the bond initiative committed $2 million, but we have some other things that we hope to fund with this. So we can look into what might be remaining for other projects once we get through this.
Cool.
There'll be a timing difference, because that tax credit is from the Inflation Reduction Act. So you have to apply for those credits.
Okay.
So it's not going to be matching up the payment to McKinstry. So there'll be a timing difference. There'll be embargoed money until we actually get the credit.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, that's
some play in the number.
okay.
Which is one reason why we're hopeful that we can have the project wrapped this year, so that we
So
can.
don't have to wait till 2025.
Right.
It's a possibility. We don't light it up in '23. So there's some execution risk in the
Okay.
timing of the credit.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
related to what Mayor Kane said about it just being interesting to have, you know, a measure of what it compares to, is there any kind of education component built into this project so that, like, the average nerd like myself could see the numbers? We were supposed to do it for Albany Pool, but I don't know if they've gotten the Wi-Fi installed out there. I think that was the hang up for a while.
I think the Wi-Fi did get installed last summer, but our numbers last summer aren't going to show great savings because of the
Yeah.
figuring out the heating thing. So,
But just
think
in
we have
general,
that.
I think it would be neat,
Yeah.
you know, kind of to Mayor Kane's point, for the public to be able to see, like, how all the different sites are doing, if that's something that interests them.
No,
If
yeah,
they find it interesting.
that's something that interests me, and I've been kind of noodling on how we can do that, especially if we could have like a cool readout at the high school that spoke to real time what savings were being realized. Because of the monitoring system, given the size of the array, we are going to have some readout on how we're doing as far as savings. So I don't have a concrete answer for how we're going to do that, but we actually talked about it at Green Team yesterday, and the school would love to do, you know, some education piece on it. We just don't have anything concrete yet, but that is the intent for sure.
I would add on to that the Green Team has a communications plan so that we can celebrate all these little wins as it goes forward and educate everybody about what we're doing and what it measures out to be. So we're in hot pursuit of these results when they come out.
Yeah, when the library did their PV panels, they had a little meter at the library, and that was the most watched thing by the school kids. See, oh man, we're
Mayor, the
That and the ospreys, no, just kidding.
back
Yeah,
of
right.
napkin math is 54 homes.
54,
Yes,
very good. What did I have?
from what I could find on the internet.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a widget that could be on the website or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, 54 just from this deal.
54 from this total project,
wow.
it would
That's cool.
offset 54 homes.
Nice.
Average kilowatt usage in Colorado.
What is average kilowatt usage for?
It says like 8,733.
Oh, okay, yeah, I had 14,000, that's
Yeah.
maybe me.
You can count it.
That's okay. Well, thanks. This is a reso, correct?
Yep.
So we can do voice vote on this. Is there a
Mayor, I
motion?
move the town council adopt resolution number 19, series of 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you.
Good progress. So the next item is first reading ordinance number 8, series of 2023, ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving Holy Cross Energy's installation of underground electrical lines and equipment on open space track 5 and the public parking tract of Willits Town Center, PUP. James.
Yeah, thank you. As the mayor indicated, this is first reading of an ordinance that would approve of allowing Holy Cross Energy to install underground electric utilities in the Tract 5 open space parcel, as well as the public parking tract in Willits Town Center. As background, Holy Cross Energy has requested ability to install the underground infrastructure in the open space parcel Tract 5, which is located right here. It's town-owned. It's the buffer area basically between the Element Hotel site and the single-family residences that are in Cypress Meadows. And then also, they're proposing to install under the public parking tract, which is the site where the Element Hotel's parking is. And you can see the underground lines that are proposed. The town has a franchise agreement with Holy Cross, and typically the franchise agreement covers installation of utilities in town rights-of-way and streets. However, the franchise agreement indicates that when they're looking to cross town property that is not a street or a right-of-way, that the town council needs to approve of the installation. The new utilities are proposed to be trenched along the open space tract, and then they're proposing to bore under the side area of the the public parking tract, and they're proposing not to impact the big drainage facility that's under the parking lot there. The purpose of the installation is to provide for resiliency in their service to the tree farm area as well as the surrounding area to the tree farm. And so as I noted, it requires town council approval. The draft ordinance that you have in your packet provides for the installation, and it contains requirements that they be required to install the shadow conduit for the town that we have in our shadow conduit ordinance. So anytime anybody is digging utilities, our shadow conduit ordinance requires that they install shadow conduit that the town can use in the future. We also have requirements that they revegetate any disturbed areas and that they indemnify the town against their use of the town properties in this case. So staff is supportive of the proposed installation as it provides resiliency in utilities in the area. And staff would recommend taking any comments that we have from Holy Cross. We've got Caleb on the Zoom call from Holy Cross. And then taking any public comments if you wish to. It's not a public hearing. And then providing council discussion, and if you're comfortable, you could approve the ordinance on first reading. I'll stop sharing my screen so you can see Caleb. Caleb, do you have any additional comments for council?
I do not. I appreciate everybody's time in hearing us out, and yeah, I think you said it all.
Quick, does this call for any revisitation of the franchise agreement with HCE?
No, and as James said, that what's happening here is exactly how it's contemplated under the franchise agreement, that as soon as Holy Cross is wanting to put an installation that's in a recreational or open space area, it has to come to you guys, because when you grant the franchise agreement, it's really contemplated for, you know, areas where you would expect utilities to be located, like your streets. And so here, it has to be approved by you all with these conditions, and then all the provisions of the franchise agreement will kind of layer on top of that and apply to this installation as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So this is not a public hearing, so we can take questions from council, and if there are none, we could take action on first reading.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 8, series of 2023 on first reading and set public hearing and second reading for May 23rd, 2023.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Pam?
Absolutely. Let's begin with David Knight,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Peter Schindler.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Next item, resolution number 20, series of 2023. A resolution of Town Council, Basalt, Colorado, approving a revocable license agreement for encroachment of a seasonal awning in the Market Street and Grange Street rights-of-way above the Capitol Creek Brewery outdoor restaurant seating. Basalt. James?
Yeah, thank you. This is...
It's like a very humanistic thing. to do here.
It is. This is consideration of a resolution that would approve of a license agreement to permit the Capitol Creek Brewery at 371 Market Street in Willits Town Center to install awning structures over their outdoor patio seating in the town's right-of-way. As a bit more background, the original approvals for Block 7 of the Willits Town Center permitted the patio seating for Capitol Creek Brewery and some of the other restaurants on Block 7 to be in the Market Street and Grange Street rights-of-way. And you can kind of see it from the down shot here that you've got. So the applicants have requested the ability to install awning structures over their patio areas in the right-of-way. The dining experience is proposed to improve by these structures. And as such, the town staff has drafted a license agreement for council's consideration. It's attached to your ordinance in your packet. It contains provisions for the applicants to indemnify the town for the applicant's use of the right-of-way. It also requires the applicants to be responsible for putting up and removing the awning structures seasonally, and staff is supportive of the license as it won't impact town services or the public safety. The town's referral agencies have been consulted and have brought up no issues and believe it will be a community benefit. So staff would suggest this evening taking any comments that the applicants have. We've got Don Bryant, who is the owner of Capitol Creek, on the line on the Zoom call. Don, do you have any additional comments or discussion for the council?
Don's muted. Don, you'll have to turn your mute button off there.
Sorry about that,
There we
guys.
That's all right.
Finally figured out Zoom, don't worry. Yeah, effectively, this just matches up
Don,
with
could
the
you get
rest
closer
of-
to your mic or speak up a little bit? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, sorry. Effectively, this just allows us to meet with the rest of the standard for Willits Town Center and to provide just a more comfortable surrounding for a dining experience. There's no logos or anything. It's made to be very much to blend in with the surroundings.
Great.
Sorry, I'm not sure if, could you guys hear me or not?
Yeah, thank you, Don. We could hear you.
So,
Anybody have any questions?
What's the situation at Mezzaluna right now?
Umbrellas.
Sorry?
Umbrellas.
Umbrellas.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be here next?
Could be.
Maybe.
yeah. Has this been modeled to make sure that in our summer afternoon thunderstorms, your awning's not going to turn into a kite or a spinnaker sail?
No, this is actually rated to 115 miles an hour.
Oh, okay.
Because we know just how difficult it could be for the wind and the sun out there.
Yeah, that would blow the pitchers over before you would have to worry about that.
Right.
All right.
And we have had quite a bit of discussion about the wind loads, and they've provided engineering study that building department is comfortable
Oh, great,
with.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice place to sit outside and sample brew, so that's going to be a nice
Well,
addition.
hopefully nicer once this is
Yeah.
installed.
Okay, comments, questions, council, motion?
Mayor, move that town council adopt resolution number 20, series of 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Thank you very much. We'll all be out there. Check this out.
Fantastic.
So, next item, 7G, Resolution 21, Series of 2023, Resolution Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, amending the procurement policy. So Jeff and Ryan are presiding.
I'll handle this one. So this is a resolution to amend the procurement policy. The existing town procurement policy was adopted in 2018 or 19? 18. Was it 18? 2018. And as you may or may not have had much experience in looking at the procurement policy, but basically lays out how we buy goods, services, materials, things for the town. And there are a few kind of minor changes that just on a staff level that we'd like to see made to allow for more efficient bidding and just awarding of contracts. And so the first one relates to how bids are solicited. And with this great thing called the internet, there's the development of a website called BidNet, where a lot of municipalities post requests for proposals and requests for bids. That's being utilized more and more by municipalities. Our procurement policy says for when we're posting proposals and bids, we need to use the paper, the town's website, or post it on town hall. This gives us the option to use an online bidding platform like a website such as BidNet. It also allows for bids to be submitted through that online platform if we already use it. So this is kind of a keeping up with the times type of change. The other two changes just relate to the town manager discretion in awarding contracts, that is, contracts that would not come to you guys anymore. So right now, any contract that's greater than $50,000 has to be approved by town council. The cost of everything is going up, and so the proposal is to change this to $75,000 to give town staff a little bit ability to be more efficient in making determinations on those contracts and having staff discretion to enter them up to $75,000. The other change to go along with that is when there are change orders on an existing contract, there is a threshold in the existing procurement policy that if you go above it, you have to bring it back to town council for approval. And as time has gone on, a lot of the projects that the town is taking on are larger in size. And so when the change amount is tied to a dollar amount, it's very, very easily triggered on a project like Midland, where we're dealing with multi-million-dollar projects. So the proposed change would say if the percentage of the contract, if needs to be increased through a change order of more than 10%, it comes back to town council. If it's under 10%, there's staff authority to enter into that change order. So those are the 3 changes that are in the procurement policy, and otherwise I think everything else under the policy is functioning pretty well, and this would help things function a little better over the foreseeable future.
So if you do get to use BidNet, do you still gotta put it on the website and in the paper?
No. So it gives staff an option as to where it would be posted. So it's alternatives.
Do we have a local contractor supplier preference?
That is in there.
There is a preference, yep.
Because as somebody who uses BidNet a lot, you definitely pull in like farther afield by advertising in BidNet, so I do want to make sure that we are trying to make it an even playing field for our local folks.
What do we call them? Preferred providers, or do we have for local vendors?
I think it's just a local preference, is how we've described it.
Is it 5%?
Okay.
It's 10%.
So, questions, comments? Sounds like a good improvement.
I'm still kind of unclear on the 10% thing. I read it like 3 times over and was like, okay, wait, I'm not sure I understand this. So you use Midland Avenue as an example. There's a change order and it's 10% of $3 million. That's $300,000. Or let's say it's 9%. And so that doesn't come to us, but that's still a huge amount of money. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that.
It's up for you guys to talk about, but that's a suggestion from staff.
What do you guys think? Dieter, you were on the financial advisory board. I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I think with the increase, I think we've already kind of approved the project in scope and whole. If there's a giant change, $300,000, I think in today's world, when you're constructing something like Midland Avenue, isn't that much.
And I think the other thing is like, if you really think about it, like,
That would be
you get a change order for $300,000, they bring it to us, and we all go, yeah, that's the shits, but we still do it, because we're not gonna stop the project.
And I'll,
Point.
Well, it's our staff, I mean, our staff isn't trying to like.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that. I know that, but it's more like a transparency thing with the public, you know, that at least they know that we know.
And I think those things are generally reviewed in like financials, like when he gives us an update and we go, okay, once we know what Midland's gonna bid out, here's this, well, then they're gonna always notate that, hey, we had a $300,000 change order because of A, B, C, and D.
I think we put like a public announcement if it's over $250,000 change order. Or like, you have to at least just say it.
Or maybe it becomes part of a manager's report or something to that, you know.
So it's not just approved willy-nilly.
Well, I think it's also,
It's in the finances.
we would, if it goes over what the budgeted amount is, then we would have to either come back to you guys with a supplemental appropriation on the budget, or just in good practice as the manager, inform you all that, hey, it looks like that, you know, this is gonna take the project over budget, but we have the money within the budget to cover it, within the overall annual adopted budget. But I don't see, you know, in what practice has been, I have, you know, made sure that you guys are aware of these things that come up, and, you know, I don't see an issue with continuing that. that practice. So, and I think the other thing too is making sure that we're nimble in these projects, because if we have to stop and wait for a change order, then you've got a time issue, and or you're also just increasing the cost of that change order. So I think we can, I can make that commitment to you guys to make sure you're aware of larger change orders. But I think it is really just so that we can keep things rolling, not to try to be intransparent.
Doug, did you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, Ryan and I were talking about this as related to certain contracts having guaranteed max. I think that some of the contractors price out every possible scenario that can go wrong. They not pad, but they add to the budget to account for all these variables. And I think that if they don't happen, then the contractor keeps the difference. The over and under is the contractor. So I actually think change orders are good, because you run with a little leaner number and you manage to change order as they come. But to Ryan's point, you don't want to hold up the show, because you got to go to council 2 weeks from now to get everybody to sign off on it. So I think there's got to be, the way to accommodate this really is, if you really wanted to, or another way to look at it is to put a collar on what exactly is. We didn't talk about this first came here, like 10%, 50,000, 10% up to 250 or whatever the council ultimately is feeling responsible for, sort of autonomy you would want to give the people on the ground working. So maybe the collar's 250 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not for me to decide, but it's just another way of.
Collar was
solving.
50,000.
Yeah.
GMAX contracts sometimes provide a false sense of security, because the tougher the conditions are, the more allowances creep into the contract. My favorite was a project I was a project manager on, and we had an allowance for excavation, and the language said, in the event the contractor encounters rock or dirt in the process of excavation, this may lead to increases. So.
And I'll just add 2 comments. We can easily change this to put as Doug said, some kind of leash on this. But also, as Ryan said, if it's a big number, one that's going to exceed the budget, we need to be back here to get an ordinance to amend the budget and do a supplemental appropriation anyway.
So it kind of.
Aren't those after the fact?
Well,
They can be, but in practice, if you have a project in front of your face that is going to have that much of an overrun, then you're going to bring it back.
Sorry, I think an example to give you here would be that if we have an engineering issue and we need to have additional engineering studies done that are beyond the scope that's in the contract, we would have a change order potentially for that. What we would be doing is studying an option that would reduce construction costs. So it would be going from kind of the left pocket to the right pocket, hopefully. And that's where being nimble that's what we're trying to get to. Instead of having to come back and say, oh, we have this thing that we need to study, and now we need to get your approval to have the study done. We want to be able to continue to keep everything on schedule, and have those trade-offs. If we're going to be over budget, we're going to have to come back and ask you anyway.
and when we say over budget, we're referring to the line item for that project or whatever that was specifically appropriated. So that would be the backstop.
Right.
Yeah, I'm all for being nimble. I just don't want to have a bunch of public comments in here about how we're doing things behind the back of the community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's fair.
Yeah,
And I don't even think it's it's not a transparency thing. It's just if someday if this group's not all here, we want to have things set up, a governance structure that makes sense and it's just going to be transparent. Everyone's going to understand it and it's ground rules. I think some kind of collar to raise it up I'd be good with that. Like, I don't know if 250, I don't want to be arbitrary.
I'd be good with this the way it's presented, just so I can throw that out there.
So I'll just throw an alternative out there. It would just be to amend that paragraph 5.1 to say that the sum of all change orders for a given contract shall not exceed and again, this is the sum of all change orders for a contract shall not exceed 10% of the original contract price or $250,000, whichever is less.
That'd be,
I think that feels right.
you feel warmer and fuzzier with it?
Do you like
Warmer and fuzzier.
it? Feels right.
Yeah.
Can I say as
It-
amended?
So that you could approve, if you're gonna make a motion to approve the resolution with the amendment to the
5.1.
change order provision, yeah. There you go.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 21, series of 2023 with the amendment to 5.1, setting a cap on change order.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. Excellent evening.
Pam, you did well.
I had
It's
one
7:30.
final note. You asked a question about the franchise agreement for Holy Cross. It expires in 2028, if that's
Oh.
what you're asking about.
Okay. I think I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys. It was,